Onion vi skapade himlen och earthen, så earth så flytse was idel och empty, on fast the whereon, over thäre, nisse, broad nisse, on horus grast was your verald, over wetero. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. There are the first two verses of Genesis. Two readings of those verses. One in the Alfric translation, and the other in the King James translation. The Bible is, of course, a great place to learn Old English. So here is my video series. Old English pronunciation, or shall I say Anglo-Saxon pronunciation. Here we shall get into the phonetics, the phonology of Anglo-Saxon, specifically Wessex Anglo-Saxon. That is what is really being taught when you read books, and specifically you're looking at mostly an understanding of the dialect used in the Wessex Gospels. So here we have the wonderful IPA chart. I live by the IPA chart, I swear by it. And other linguists should too. The IPA chart is an amazing thing, and we're going to get into phonetics. We're going to get into the phonology of Anglo-Saxon. We're going to look at it, understand it, pronounce it properly. There don't actually seem to be any other videos on YouTube in which Anglo-Saxon is properly pronounced. You don't really hear the and you don't hear people pronouncing all the velar fricatives properly. You don't really hear it being pronounced at all. You don't understand, you don't see a true understanding of yol, and it's really disappointing, and it's part of the ignorance in the English-speaking world today. The ignorance of phonetics, of phonology, of linguistics in general, and people who are taught languages aren't really taught linguistics properly, not taught phonetics properly, and the real shame here is this is our own language. This is English. This is our own ancient form of our own language, and who else is going to dissect it except ourselves? It's our own language, and we really ought to properly understand it. Now, if you do read the books that I read, Samuel Moore's work, the works of Henry Sweet, you'll be able to read about the phonetics and the phonology of it properly. But without those books for you to read, this series should do. So what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at a Western Germanic, North Sea Germanic language. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the Wessex that we're going to learn about in these lessons. We're going to be learning about the West Saxon dialect, or the West Saxon variety of a North Sea Germanic dialect of the North Sea variety of Western Germanic. All these varieties I'm talking about, these were mutually understandable varieties of a dialect. When you get into the shifting in High German, then you start having some unintelligibility between people. But we're talking about the Wessex dialect, or the Wessex variety of a dialect here. The term North Sea Germanic is, of course, interchangeable with other terms. And there is also the term Low German, which English can be grouped in. It can be a little bit confusing. But anyways, we are looking at a language formed from the varieties of the dialects spoken by the Angles and the Saxons and a few other smaller groups. The largest body of works of writing is from the Wessex variety. When you look at the early Middle Ages, you see the largest body of writing from Wessex. In other words, the variety spoken by the West Saxons. Hence we see Anglo-Saxon meaning Angli-Saxon, as they were, of course, influenced by the Angles who gave us the words English in England. It is more appropriate, you see, to say anything like Old English or Anglican when you're talking about something written by Mercian. but we are not going to be looking too much at that. We're going to be looking at Wessex works. So, what should you have for background information? Well, you really need to have a good background of linguistics before you get into this. It's really advisable for you to have learned Latin before getting into this. There is a lot about learning these phonetics. There's a lot to this series. You should have some basic understanding, some basic knowledge, a bit of understanding, some knowledge about the English vowel shifting. You should be able to understand mechanically why this sentence, "I wish she were here," will be pronounced in Mallory English as "I wish she were here." Now, of course, there are other issues we have to go over. We're going to be talking about, making these diphthongs in Old English, l, and others, and having a Latin background isn't going to help you with those. But linguistics is a lot to take in, a lot to handle, and you should have some basic understanding of things and some background in Latin or another language. Some language learning background is very advisable, especially having learned some Latin.